Hi, good evening. I'm Paul Wealls. I'm the presenter for IoT North this evening. Welcome to the Christmas fireside chat. We're going to literally throw a 2020 on the fire, have a bit of a chat with some industry leaders and previous speakers from the past year. Just a bit of a catch up to see what they've been up to, some insight in different areas and industries. And if you have any questions, please do drop them in the chat and I'll read out to them. And at the end, I'll also open again to questions if you'd like to ask in person as well. Thanks so much for joining us. Excuse me, let's run through. So we've got Dave Swan from Tharsus. We have Daniel Sexton, who spoke with us around about June, July time this year from Redchip Ventures in the US. Matt Hatton from Transforma Insights that we had around August time. Ben Gileshpie, Engineering and Manufacturing Network. Joe Routledge from Lumo, helping us with some R&D tax credit info, and David Tischler from Belina. And we have Savvas Papagiannidis from Newcastle University. Savvas, I apologize for laughing at your surname because I struggle with it. So first of all, Matt, how are you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Yeah, I'll be glad when this year's over for sure. You seem to have been really active across your social profiles and an awful lot of content and research you guys have been doing. I was wondering if you could share with us just some of the highlights that you found from 2020 and maybe some insight on what you believe may be coming through for 2021.
Of course. I'd say 2020 wasn't really a highlights kind of a year. I think that's probably a fair way to describe it, isn't it? I have made a note of a few trends though, things that I've noticed. I wanted to do a top 10, but I think I've got to about a top 7, something along those lines. But I don't want to keep you all here all day. And it's just some things that are kind of happening, maybe not events so much as things that have kind of evolved during the year and will probably extend into 2021 as well. So I've kind of taken that, what's happened this year and what's happened next year, and sort of shoved them together. Number one being COVID. I mean, I've got to mention it. Obviously, I'll try not to dwell on it too long, but I think it's impossible to ignore the impact that's had on the IoT space. I'd kind of characterize it as demand up with some qualifications and supply down. So some real challenges with actually rolling things out in the year. A bit of hesitance about companies watching what's going to happen with the economy and so on. And so we got generally a market that was a bit depressed by quite a lot depressed in some areas, but generally depressed by the ability to just deliver, to roll out, to get past some of the logistics challenges. Some of the sectors have been really badly hit. Connected car, for instance. I mean, forget it. No one's driving in their cars nowadays, and the car and new car sales are going through the floor. So that's had a bit of a knock-on effect on that as a sector. Obviously, retail is another one. People aren't in shops. Public transport, are people using public transport? And going forwards, are people going to use public transport? Are they going to be going to offices? There's a whole load of questions about the longer term impact of COVID that got to be answered as well, and maybe stimulus package. Might see a stimulus package that's going to encourage the adoption in some other areas around some of the smart cities areas, something like that. That's one. What else have I noted? It was a big year for lots of new network technologies. I'm a telecoms guy, so I like talking about the telecom stuff. So I'm going to talk about that for a minute. We got 5G properly sort of properly coming in. Not that anybody's really going to be using it. My general pat comment about 5G is that 5G talks about IoT an awful lot, and IoT talks about 5G not at all. Remote surgery or autonomous driving. Well, these are things that are probably 5 years out, if indeed you don't take the view with something like autonomous driving that the clue's in the name and that it should be autonomous, right? Yeah. So necessity for 5G. Well, yeah, maybe, and things that are making use of ultra low latency and so on. Yeah, we're talking a bit further out than now. But Things that are happening now, though, and one exception, private networks. A lot of interest in private networks, throwing up your own 5G network to use dedicated spectrum, maybe for factory automation, AR, VR. There's some pretty exciting stuff happening in there. So that's probably the one bright spot for 5G in IoT. Lots of stuff happening with the low power wide area network. So narrowband IoT, LTE-M, LoRa, Sigfox. These things keep on rising steadily. There's quite a lot of adoption starting to happen in those spaces. And not only that, but driving out some of the complexity in it. Roaming agreements and network optimization and these kinds of things are starting to happen. So those technologies are becoming properly usable. And 2G and 3G switch off is the other one that's happening. We're starting to get some clarity on that in a few countries in Europe, although not that much. I suspect that's more about one for 2021, 2022. We'll get an idea of when those networks are going to be disappearing. But our expectation is you won't get very many 2G devices being installed after sort of the mid to late 2020s, just because the networks aren't going to be there. Hyperscalers, that's another big one. Seems like the biggest topic in IoT at the moment is the impact that Microsoft and AWS are going to have. A few ways that this impacts things. One is in terms of them being effectively the main host for IoT application data, and not only that, but also the way in which IoT applications are managed. So increasingly, you'll see those cloud platforms acting as a kind of an abstraction layer where through APIs, all the connectivity management and device management and various other bits get sort of abstracted up into that layer. And if you want to, you should be able to eventually run or manage the entirety of your IoT application through this suite. There's also increase in edge. It's sort of a counterpoint to them dominating the cloud space. So they're pushing into edge because a whole load of applications are moving to the edge. And if the processing and storage is moving to the edge, then they kind of want to be there in their own right, and also in terms of sort of managing the relationship between the edge and the cloud. Also, an interesting announcement Amazon made with Sidewalk. I don't know whether people saw that one, but effectively that coming up as a sort of crowdsourced LoRa network for connecting pretty much any connected home devices. So there's a whole load of interesting stuff that those guys are pushing through. Regulation. We haven't had a lot of IoT related regulation up until now. Really hasn't been very much. There's been regulations that affect IoT, but in terms of specific dedicated IoT regulation, that's been a 2020 thing, very much so. And all around security for pretty obvious reasons, because that's where the pain points are. So we've seen regulations in the EU, the UK, the US, mostly fairly toothless in terms of actually forcing you to do anything, and fairly basic, but it probably resolved like 95% of the security issues if people were to follow those regulations. So pretty interesting stuff there. And I wrote a book and started a podcast. So the Internet of Things Myth, it's available in not all good bookshops, but only on Amazon. I think I'll probably park it there, shall I, and see if we can turn over, and I'm sure we'll come back to some of those topics, and unless you wanted to jump in on any of them, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to ask some questions and also open the floor to some of the attendees. I've definitely seen some animation and facial expressions from Dave from Tharsus on a few comments that he made. So the first one I would like to actually bring Dave into the conversation was he's actually been testing with 5G. That's correct, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah, private networks.
It would in the private network side of things as well. Yeah, I'd love to hear about your experience with it and your thoughts of it.
It's not there yet. Yeah, so we got involved in an accelerator program with Ericsson on trying to introduce the world to private network 5G, and yeah, technically it works awesomely. Yeah, we managed to get some really great stable signals. Really high frame rate video stuff. But our premise was balking the trend at the edge processing on image analysis and bringing it back to a central server to do like model training and subsequent model training, rather than sort of pushing really suboptimal models out to the edge. We were trying to bring it all back in as much as we could, and it was really interesting. It worked really well. Didn't realize that Wi-Fi was quite as bad as it is until you do a head-to-head between that and 5G. But then,
is this Wi-Fi 5 or Wi-Fi 6? Because Wi-Fi 6 is a bit more capable, but I mean latency, it's lousy still. But
it wasn't so much the latency that was killing us; it was just the consistency. So the overall frame rates that we were managing to get, we were doing it back to back, and we were seeing it just drop out, come back, drop out, and in a pretty much an optimum environment. So there was very little other traffic going on in Wi-Fi, but 5G was really stable. But when we started to then explore, so now what do we do next? It then became the commercials and the adoption of it just isn't there. And we got involved in it because we were really interested in its use for IoT.
Yeah.
And then when you start going, right, okay, so that's really great. I can understand how to do that. Right now I want to put 10,000 devices out there in my private network. And they go, well, no one's made 10,000 5G modems yet. So give us a shout. And by the way, each one is hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So it's an interesting technology. For us, it could solve a problem, but it can't commercially solve a problem. It can't even get close to it. And an average installation in a private environment is 150, 200 grand before you've even got any modems on the network. So really interesting technology, but a long way from being commercial.
So for that use case, Dave, isn't this where actually a consideration of using edge computing and being able to collect the data that you want to collect and sending still or excerpts of video across the network for the model building? And
I mean, we created it purely as a fictitious use case to allow us to explore what 5G could or couldn't do in a private network. We're pursuing another product inquiry at the moment that's why we were doing it, but we were using this one as a cover story. So you could poke all sorts of holes in our cover story for what it was, and it was really interesting to see it. But I was actually more interested in device density and also fixated by peer-to-peer. Really have a huge opportunity, I think, in that space for that peer-to-peer and peer-to-master comms. Is really interesting to us, but I was actually in the end quite disappointed that actually I couldn't do it. I could do it technically, I just can't do it. I can't do it commercially.
Early days is certainly the way we describe it. In fact, most private networks are still it's LTE. It's not 5G. That tends to be the way it works. But
and I was also quite disappointed that I found that when I was particularly fixated by this peer-to-peer, and that's when I was told that actually that's not released in the standard yet. So despite the fact that particularly in an IoT space, they've made a lot of noise about 5G's peer-to-peer type stuff, it's just not there.
So moving on to sort of the Azure and AWS statements there and their impacts with business, Matt. I mean, personally, we the company that I work for, AD-Link, we've been working with both parties, and I found it very interesting on how interested they are in edge and enabling their connectivity to get the data to and from, so they still have that data and collection from it. Do you kind of feel like that AWS and Azure are going to come into like quite a big title race on this, or do you think there's going to be some disruptors that may disrupt their place?
It's hard to see where they come from. That will be the main point, at least for. Well, I mean, there will still be a fragmented market, right? But in terms of if you've got if you're looking for a company that's got a no, I'm sorry. I'm thinking while I'm talking. So they'll dominate the market. But what we're talking about effectively is application enablement platform. That function as the function that they've got as an application enablement platform, and there will always be specialists in various different areas, be that in particular verticals or in particular sets of functionality. I don't know what that might be, but they will sit in various areas. And so that role of a sort of abstraction layer won't exclusively go to them, but they are very much the sort of the default option, I guess, is how you can think of them. Not least because if you're looking for a cloud option, then they're the ones to go with, because they're the only games in town.
Yeah, I mean, what happened to Google?
Well, Google, let's say. Yeah, Google.
You know, they had their IoT team. They were making some good push in the market, and then about 18 to 24 months ago, it just all seemed to just disappear from them. Their investment in it.
Yeah, they made a bunch of acquisitions as well, Zyberly and a few other things, right? But they do what Google does, which is they drop things, right? They pick them up, they think they're interesting, and then they park them if they don't think they're going to be a significant opportunity. Now they are there and around about in the background as a supporting act. And in fact, there's a few interesting things that they're doing around. I forget the names of the product lines. Apologies for that. But around hosting for other cloud versions of software for supporting IoT. So, for instance, if you're AMDocs, say, and you want to kind of cloudify your a bunch of telecom services, then parking on Google Cloud is one option. They've got a specific set of products for that, the name of which temporarily escapes me. So they are doing something, but it's more of a kind of a support act, and the sort of hardcore getting heavily into the IoT space seems to have very much disappeared. They don't seem to be that interested in that nowadays. So.
Yeah. Hey, brilliant. Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate your insight and joining us this evening. Mr. Gileshpie, Ben, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you, Paul, and thank you to everyone. I suddenly feel like the most analog person in a digital room, by the way, but we'll see how that goes.
And I didn't realize there was a Wi-Fi 6. I just thought there was Wi-Fi, because that helps make you feel a bit better.
So Ben, you represent engineering manufacturing organization. Would you like to share with everybody what you guys do and sort of the reach that you guys support?
Yeah, surely. So we're cross-sector, so we work with businesses from mad men in sheds with long beards who invent things, right up to your tier ones, your OEMs, and some of the biggest businesses in the Northeast. And across that, we'll work heavy metal manufacturing, precision engineering, aerospace, automotive, food, the whole spectrum. And I think one of the nice things, I know Matt touched on this a little bit before, the last 9 months have been quite extraordinary. I'll use a polite word. It's been very, very difficult, but we've seen some phenomenal collaborations with the businesses that we work with, which we see, to be fair, that's the whole purpose of our existence, is to bring together businesses to add value to them, to take away some of the day-to-day pain. A lot of that we do by putting businesses together to support each other. And we've seen a real entrepreneurial spirit and incredible agility, actually, as well, over the past year, where we've seen businesses turn almost on a sixpence, to use an old-fashioned term, and maybe redirect their resources elsewhere. Some of it was very interesting. I think if you had a 3D printer, you started making visors. I'm sure, there's probably a glut of those somewhere. But a lot of businesses really looked in depth at what they were doing and looked for ways to help generate a more positive outcome for their business, but also a more collaborative approach for the Northeast. And that's what we're about. We're purely about collaboration. For our year, it's been very different. We've been more about supporting businesses around practical matters. The word furlough, I hadn't even heard of it up till the end of February, beginning of March this year, supporting businesses through that process. A lot around what's one of the interesting outcomes, actually, and it does feather bizarrely into what you're talking about here. I had a call about this morning, is the ability of people to be able to actually work independently without being in the office space, for those that can actually do that, having the hardware, the software, the infrastructure in place, but also the general expectation that if you send someone home with a laptop, magically they can do everything that they could do in the office without any of the training or the support that we recognise now, looking back, that's needed. And we've done a lot of support on that as well. But I think generally, you know, for us, you know, it's been less face-to-face interaction, more
less golf.
Yeah, less golf, a lot less golf this year. 2 rounds, that's it. You know, a lot more of this sort of thing. And I think we'll all suffer from that a little bit. We like to see people in the main. Even the techiest amongst us still do like to interact with people. Contrary
do you think there's been a bit of a feeling that's sort of been forced acceleration of adoption of technology to survive, and sort of like a big push to a more open innovation across businesses as well?
Absolutely. It's interesting. I mean, I know I've had this conversation with you before, Paul. If you go back, say, 3-4 years, we ran some Industry 4 IoT workshops. 15, 20, we're running a place called Net Park in the Northeast, which is recognized as quite a forward-thinking location to have your business. And a lot of very small businesses in there. And we really struggled to get engineering manufacturing businesses to engage, to be brutally honest. I get all the experts, you know, I'm sure anyone here would have been there had we sent the invites out. You know, I had the universities there, Durham, Sunderland University, Teesside University, representatives from these, representatives from organizations like this as well. But you almost had to put a black hood over the head of the entrepreneur and throw them in the boot of your car, or the trunk of your car for those Americans that are here, and try and get them, you know, to sit around the table with us, because they're all about tangible and ROI. It's all about return on investment for them. This year, you're quite right. We've seen a change in direction. We've seen businesses have to become more agile. I think generally for manufacturing and on the shop floor, it hasn't been the biggest issue in that, you know, things, you know, these businesses still operated, obviously customer dependent, of course, that their market hadn't dried up. Social distancing and the like was almost automatically in place because of the nature of big pieces of kit. You know, people don't stand that closely together. But for the workforce, for that connected part of the business, companies all of a sudden had to start investing and had to start thinking about how they could survive. There's been a lot of good initiatives out there that we've worked with and that we're part of to drive that forward, to help businesses. But it's that step change, you know. I mean, you see tremendous changes out of adversity. I'm not likening the last year to a war. You know, at the end of every war, you see massive leaps forward in technology and technological advancements. I think we will see that. We'll see people who got IoT got it. Some thought that they kind of understood it and sort of knew where it was headed. Many didn't have a clue. This has brought a lot of that to the table for them. And we're speaking to more and more businesses who are now investing in pieces of kit that are connected. And I'm talking about big pieces of kit here as well, you know, whereby you can sit in an airport in Abu Dhabi with your iPad and see a dashboard of what's happening in your business. Things like that weren't possibly ever thought of before. Connecting you more directly to your customers and your supply chain as well.
Sort of like it's really pushing forward on that true digital transformation, you know. And a lot of businesses, about a decade ago, sort of looked at digital transformation as, hey, I've got a website, I can take an order, and it's been that happened as an adoption quite quickly. To be fair, what seems to have took that stall of actually connecting everything behind the scenes of that digital transformation in certain areas and certain businesses have been slow to adopt. And then you've got the behemoths like your Ricardos and your Amazons that really have embraced it, and they've reaped the benefits from doing that with it. So what would, you know, for the members of the community here, which is what we are as IoT North, what would you advise, you know, to businesses that are members that are wanting to talk and support and interact with manufacturing and engineering? What would you say would be the best way for them to approach it?
One of the things we've tried to encourage is to get the bigger companies. I'm kind of preempting Dave, who's coming on after this, but you know, to get the bigger companies, the exemplars in our region, to open the doors, not in the fullest sense, but to let businesses, smaller businesses who need to be, or even big businesses that are more traditional, that need to get on board with this, to see the positive steps that you can take. we've done quite a lot of work around innovation, and quite a number of innovation workshops sort of up to February this year.
Yeah.
And the best ones that we had a great one with the NHS and a great one with an engineering business in the Northeast. Both of them basically just said, this is what we're doing, and these are the easy steps to achieve that. That then allows, Joe Bloggs to ask the question, well, if I was to go down this route, what's the best course of action for me? What should that initial step be? What should I expect? ROI is a wide word, but what should I expect by way of a financial input, a financial output, and what improvements within the business will I see? Because some companies genuinely do see this as such a massive thing.
Yeah.
That they can't get their head around the baby steps to be able to achieve it. I mean, just very briefly, one of the things that we did with one of our businesses, a very, very good, quite forward-thinking engineering business with some great products, actually OEM in certain aspects, struggling a little bit with the whole IoT thing. And they went to one of the large automotive part manufacturers in the Northeast. And they just saw a couple of little simple systems when they were there. I mean, they were on a grand scale because it was a big manufacturer, but they were relatively simple systems, particularly around storage and storage solutions and utilizing data more effectively, connectivity between the different, the different hubs and the different dashboards within the business. And they adopted that because they saw it, understood the practical application, could have the conversation. It's all about exemplars. Get the businesses that are early adopters or that are adopting and taking on board now to handhold others and just to help them gently through the process. Because we tend to use big term. The first round table we did, we spent about 2 hours discussing what IoT was. Yeah. In Industry 4. And if the supposed experts, I'm not including myself in that, by the way, but the others actually battled over that, we'll go back a few years, what hope have you got of translating that into a term or into terminology that your traditional manufacturer has? But they all appreciate that they don't use fax machines anymore. There was a change, so those sort of steps they can see, they just don't know how to start on that journey.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, but what the takeaway I'm hearing there is, one, communicate clearly and simply.
Yeah.
Two, take a step-by-step approach. And three, have a partner that you can demonstrate an example of it being adopted and sharing the value from that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. Brilliant. Ben, thanks very much. Does anybody have any questions for Ben? In the room website. Ben, thanks very much. I'm sure we'll come back to you with some questions a little bit later on. Dave Swan, thanks very much for joining us from Tharsus. How are you this evening?
I'm good. I'm just wryly smiling there as Ben described us as one of the larger businesses in the Northeast. Well,
you're certainly a shining light in the space that you are, though. Let's be fair. There's.
I noticed Danius is in the audience. He'll remember us when we were slightly smaller. 12 years ago we were like 8 people. Yeah. And now, in the group we're about 400 people now. So I suppose we're getting there, but we have to pinch ourselves every now and again and realise that that's what we've become. But yeah.
I mean, you're definitely one of those exemplary businesses in the region that people do refer to when they're talking about success manufacturing and engineering, and the great promotion and product that you released there, Bump, which we had your colleague talk on. I think it was last month or the month prior. That the speed that you got that out and demonstrate the innovation was seriously impressive as a business. Not to stroke your ego too much, but but it is true, and as Ben was saying, it is one of those businesses that especially the region look at for inspiration from, which is great because you guys do that really well with your social content.
Yeah, I think we're conscious of who we are. We're really proud of what we've created, but we're also proud enough to know that we know almost nothing in lots of areas. So yeah, we're always keen to collaborate with whoever we can collaborate with. We're happy to make mistakes, even happier to learn from other people's mistakes. Yeah, happier to share our mistakes so other people can not make them, so that they can make their own special ones as well. So yeah, it's been a turbulent year, a challenging year. It's been a really been a really successful year for us. It's been a bit of a pivot, a bit of a an opportunity to reset and remember some of the things that were important to us. As you know, come March, everyone was a bit soul searching and working out, you know, this business is about to evaporate. What do we do? What do we really care about? What do we desperately need to keep and maintain and remember? And yeah, we've just finished this financial year a couple of days ago, and looking forward to next year.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a year we won't forget.
Yeah.
It's just trying to capture the good bits. Forget about some of the bad bits.
Yeah.
If I go on another Zoom call next year, I shall really scream. Yeah. So can't wait to get back to face to face.
I think I'm going to move to live stream, so it won't be Zoom next time.
Right,
we'll go on to YouTube instead. Just to flip it up, we'll copy off Bellina and their happy hour on a Friday.
Cool.
There's a little.
I think we've had coming into this year. I don't think we were anticipating doing anything really in the IoT space. That's not really what we are. We make, you know, smart machines. They're you know, automation. Okay, there's an element of data collection on and sharing data up to the cloud, but nothing in the IoT space as I would have previously described it. And Jane also remember that I'm quite disparaging of even the term IoT and you know, industry 4 point whatever. I'm not interested. I'm more interested in the outcomes and the whys and the purposes of it. But then we found ourselves playing in Bump took us right into that space, and something we never even imagined we'd do. Playing with Ericsson on 5G took us into that space, and some of the other products that we're playing with, you know, we're starting to understand and play with wearables, real-time location tracking systems that we did loads of experiments last year on ourselves as we started to understand the power of data and looking for insight into motion and movement and what can you see, how can you approach innovation in manufacturing in a this century view rather than a last century. We got fascinated last year. We went to see Skyscanner up in Edinburgh. We went on a networking trip up there, and they described their software development process. And they described that they were previously in a sort of the annual cycle, as everyone used to be, and that they now moved to this sort of live concurrent update of, you know, they've basically got 15, 20, 30 live versions of their website up at various different points, depending on which micro changes have been adopted, live tracking of change management, how the KPIs are working, whether a change will get rolled into the master branch, etc., all being fully automated and done, and desperately trying to get to that point where they were handling 1,000 changes concurrently, and really proud of that. So we got fascinated with, okay, well, software's doing that. How can hardware get into that space and start to imagine that level of comfort with change, and doing stuff with data around that change, which just kind of took us into that real-time location, understanding how your operations were working, trying to seek insight into what was happening, because you were seeing data that you wouldn't previously get. Which then started taking us into a bit of a personal fascination of mine around sort of behavioral science and the sort of human dynamics and nudging and you know, those types of things. How do you influence people's behavior, not just the variables of a machine? And okay, yes, on an iPad I can see what my turning center is doing, but how do I influence and adjust people's behavior? How do I react to the sort of the sentiment in the business? How do I understand that without having to do silly surveys and stuff like that? Can I do that from ambient noise in the canteen? Can I get a sort of a predictive nature associated to, you know, how's the crack around the coffee machine type stuff? You know, that's just what insight you can get, and then how you can use that to influence your, you know, the things that you feel are important, your core values type stuff. So we're playing in and around those spaces, learning lots, reaching out to lots of people, making loads and loads of mistakes, and just we're great believers in serendipity. You know, you do some stuff, push yourself, learn some stuff, and in 3 or 4 months' time, the thing that you had no idea why you were doing it would suddenly become, of course, I know how to do that, or I know someone who knows how to do that. Right, now we'll be able to do that. And that's kind of how we've approached 5G. It's kind of how we approach sort of real-time location tracking. and hopefully bump will turn out to be the same. And yeah, so that's sort of our approach. But yeah, it's kind of a snapshot into our world this year.
Yeah, that's a really interesting sort of insight into the way that you guys think and have been looking at things. And it's quite interesting, like the type of data that you're collecting with Bump. That some of that sentiment of collection of behaviour and stuff can come from that, connected with other things as well.
Yeah, I mean, we started with Bump right at that. It was a human to human interaction device. Yeah. It was an enabler to sort of take the hierarchy out of a challenge of social distancing. You know, you don't have to tell your boss to keep away because this inanimate object is sort of arbitrating that for you. And got some really good anecdotes out of the NHS for that type of stuff about consultants and cleaners. Yeah. Suddenly, the cleaners feel empowered because they don't have to ask this consultant to keep away. Yeah. So it's really interesting, and we're really sort of intrigued by how that all plays out and how the human dynamic plays. And we always focus on the outcome that we're trying to get, not the technology that we're trying to deploy to do it. So yeah, that's kind of what wakes us up in the morning.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting approach as well, as you mentioned, about thinking more about the outcome and what's the possible from the outcome, and by at least trying and thinking that this might be the goal, and sort of thinking about like Eric Ries's Lean Startup kind of methodology of pivoting when you see something go, oh, actually hold on, validate from that, and then starting to follow that route instead of just going north. You know, taking those little steps aside to that are thrown in front.
We find it's absolutely critical. You've got to really understand why you're doing the thing that you're doing. What does the destination look like? Because that way you can experiment with ways of getting there. You're not vested in the way that you're doing, so you can happily drop it without having to worry about all that sort of emotional investment that you've made in that particular solution. You know, we've all been in that situation where, oh God, I'll just do a little bit more work and I'll get this to work, a little bit more work, and then suddenly 3 months later you turn around, you've invested half your business in something. And if only you could rewind time, you'd do it something differently. So we're very much focused around what's that destination you're trying to get to. Assume that the thing you're working on now is rubbish, but it'll help you understand a bit more about what it is. Only do enough in it now that you can learn that and then be really comfortable to drop it and then do the thing that you now know. Might be the way to do it. Is very much how we approach the early stages of stuff. And then once you've managed to convince yourself that you're entitled to a solution that's going to deliver those outcomes, right, now you dial down into the detail and crack on and do it properly. But don't build too much sort of vested interest in solutions before it's too late.
Yeah, and I think as you quite rightly say, that's sometimes the risk is that we put that emotional connection into stuff that we're doing on that way. You know, we overly commit, and then it becomes a more painful sort of separation with projects that you're working on. When actually, if you're taking a different approach and being willing to see those little pivots that would have been coming through from it, then you would have.
I mean, to be honest, we all fall in love with our solutions, don't we? We all fall in love with the idea that we've done something awesome and we want the world to see it, or your boss to see it, or the company to see it, etc. So it can be really difficult to just let those go. Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of our approach. Not sure what's the purpose of the question, but yeah.
Do you think that's a bit of a? Sorry, I find this really interesting. But do you think that's a bit of maybe a culture thing as well? Of when people are working on projects, they feel like they've been given a project and it's got to succeed. That actually, if you change the culture and allow people to understand that this is an experiment, it's allowed to fail, and using that kind of terminology, that you may get an interesting dynamic in the workforce. I think
we're really fortunate, and I think we count our blessings all the time. The sort of business that we're dealing with all sorts of different things every single day. It's not the second generation or 15th generation of the thing that we've been doing for the last 40 years type stuff. You know, getting excited about the radiuses on the new Nissan door handle, etc. It's not that. You know, it's a new thing. So therefore, we at our essence, we're just pretty agile and happy to move to that right now, move to something else. And we kind of attract people who are more attracted to that anyway, and they would get really frustrated the other way around. But yeah, not sure that's the answer to your question, but yeah, that's sort of.
No, it does. It's a brilliant insight. I really appreciate it, David. Thanks very much for joining us tonight. Joe Routledge Lumo, how are you doing, buddy?
Not too bad, not too bad. Thank you very much. It's quite interesting what Dave was saying there about a few things around the emotional connection. I had a brainwave about a really good business idea the other day, which got burst the very next morning. I had total insomnia till 2 in.the morning, and I was gutted. I was like, it's the best idea in the world. I'll be a millionaire. And then within like 5 minutes of talking to a techie guy, who's like, no, it's not got legs. And it's yeah, you do invest that kind of emotional kind of drive to kind of make it successful very quickly, I think, in the process.
So can I ask a question? Did you only validate with the techie guy?
I also looked at patents on it as well to see if I had like, but apparently there's a patent already in place. So yeah, it was looking at electric charging and using curbs to do it, but
yeah, there's stuff out there.
Apparently, some of the guys I spoke to went, yeah, it's already been looked at, it's already been done. And it's like, well,
I think BMW might have a patent of something along those lines as well, with the pads for your driveway to charge through your driveway.
I bet everyone on this call is going, had that idea 6 years ago, and I'm just so far behind the curve. It's unbelievable.
So how's things been for Lumo this year? Interesting, yeah, as we all keep saying. Businesses looking to regain and get back as much investment that they have made to be able to make sure that they've got that money to invest again for the following year. How have you found the market this year?
It's been an interesting one. I think I would put the year down into kind of 3 stages, which was the first stage, a bit of shock and awe of lockdown and furloughing and people kind of adapting to this new hybrid way of working. And then it felt like there was a bit of a kind of siloing of businesses where they were just looking to survive and to get through and, get down to their core and get through this year. It feels now like the company's starting to open up and there's more collaboration and certainly more conversations around how we can support with R&D tax credits. I think a lot of the potential referrals and furloughing, certainly earlier in the year, has really kind of pushed a lot of our decision makers into the tail end of this year and into 2021. But what I think should be interesting in the new year is the R&D tax credits, where people have pivoted their business into how to help with COVID-19, whether it's looking at IoT and track and trace and the different solutions around there. I've been talking to one company who looks at SIM card tracking as opposed to using an app-based tracker. But then also the manufacturing side of things and pivoting towards PPE manufacturing. So it's been interesting. Our existing base has been great, and we've worked with them and proceeded with supporting them. It's interesting what Dave was saying with regards to making mistakes. I think it's often an area that's completely overlooked in R&D in regards to, you don't necessarily have to have a successful outcome when it comes to research and development. By definition, it doesn't guarantee a successful outcome. So you can always claim R&D tax credits on unsuccessful work, which can kind of open the door and kind of make the potential losses that you could have a little bit more palatable moving forward. So yeah. So I wasn't quite sure how to wrap that up, but
So do you have any advice for anybody preparing for 21? Anything that if they're starting to embark on a project and starting to think about the investment that they're making, what should they be being cognizant of in documenting and such like, so that they can maximize the potential?
I think it's integral to do it proactively and to look forward to your research and development. I think a lot of the traditional models is for year ends to kick in and then for a retrospective view to be put into what research and development has been done and a claim to be completed in that regard. Mm-hmm. Our approach was much more of a proactive approach. So yes, we'll do your previous and current year, but actually it's much more around supporting future innovation. So, what projects are in the pipeline for 2021? How are you structuring those projects? How are you funding those projects? Even down to the wording within those projects can have a massive effect on your research and development. An example, I was talking to one company and they were building a training center, which is great and it would be really good. But, if you include research and development training center into it, all of a sudden you can incorporate quite a lot of the construction costs into your research and development claim. So it's understanding the nuance and the wording within your projects as to what then makes it eligible for your research and development tax credits. So yes, looking retrospectively is one way to do it, but really I think having that proactive approach of understanding what your future projects are, we can then forecast and estimate what the value of your future claims can be, so that when you are budgeting for your future work, you'll understand exactly what you're getting back, and you'll be maximizing the value of it, because through the kind of support that we can provide, you're going to get the maximum out of the future research and development that you're doing. So
brilliant. And if you're interested in getting in touch with Joe, please do go to iotnorth.uk website, go to our partners page, and there's a link there to get in contact with the guys. Thanks very much, Joe. Always a pleasure to catch up with you. And I'm just disappointed that you didn't bring the Millennium Falcon in from the office to show everybody. But I am impressed with your virtual background.
yeah, sorry.
It's all right. I'll forgive you. Daniel Sexton, how are you, sir? How's things in the States?
Doing well. Things are great over here. I've noticed I'm the only person so far that has an American accent.
There's another coming. There's another coming.
David, if you need a translator, just let me know. And I'm in the South too, so
Are you keeping up with the accent?
I actually, I'm surprisingly, there's a lot of information conveyed more quickly than we do in where I am. So that's excellent.
Well, this is everybody's talking in their telephone voice. So this is a lot slower than if we were meeting in person. We'd be talking an awful lot quicker. I think it's one of the things that Zoom's helped us, helped the region with, is that we've all made really good professional telephone voices and slowed down our accents so people can understand us. Hey, what have you been seeing in the US? What trends are you seeing coming through this year?
So interestingly, we're conducting interviews right now with executives and leaders. So at least 100 interviews with executives to get insights into what people are currently investing in, what they're trying to do in 2020 and 2021 projected. Unfortunately, we don't have the data crunched yet, so I can't give you factoids about the data. But one of the obfuscating factors of what we've found is that everyone reports that they're doing everything that's cutting edge. So we have to dig a little bit into, I've got it broken down into basically 3 categories where, someone may be doing something that's out of the box, kind of AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, which I call the Sam's Club, Costco, kind of, you're just doing whatever it is that's out of the box in IoT, and AOI, and AI, and edge computing, or you're spending millions, creating a custom application for something, or you're doing some hybrid in between. But 5G came up earlier, and we're actually helping sell a satellite company right now. So we've talked in depth with Dish Networks, and I know there's a lot of hype around 5G, but they've purchased a lot of spectrums in that area that sort of prevent others from getting in the space. And they have a certain amount of time where they can spend several $1 billion investing in the 5G approach. And it seems to be sort of centered around MECs. So like mobile edge computing from the edge out to the tower.
The network edge sort of proposition. And it's one of the things that's cloud, and we talked about this a few months ago. The cloud of terminology that the behemoths of telecom providers using terminology that's been around for a while longer, where edge computing is at the point of the edge, and they're now using the terminology edge, meaning the network edge, and sort of clouding that terminology, which is then makes things a little bit difficult on your market.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think that 5G's gotten a lot of hype, but there is some real progress being made, I think, on the latency differences between, the actual edge where the devices are and, the cell phone tower.
Yeah.
Where they're getting sometimes like sub 10 millisecond response times, where you may be getting 80 to 100 millisecond response times from AWS or the cloud, which enables a whole new set of use cases. So we're seeing investments in that area as well.
Yeah. The thing is, Matt and Dave especially mentioned this earlier, is that I think it's a common trend with telecom providers with new technology that comes through in connectivity, that the cost kills the opportunity for being adopted for the use cases they promote. That actually, if you looked at that use case and broke it down into cost, about 99% of it will probably be a telecom cost for the hardware, the connectivity.
Yes.
That it falls flat because of it. So people then start to pivot and either going back to ideas that they already had, or adopting stuff like LoRa and such like, which may not be given the best quality, but the cost enables them to be able to deliver on the project they're trying to create. Because what they want to do is collect the data in some, be it real time or whatever, which you can't do with LoRa. But quite often, the cost that is the killer is the cellular connectivity cost, which sort of, in some respect, telecom is supposed to be, I'm going to get my pedestal here, sometimes the opportunity of IoT adoption and accelerated growth is killed by the operators charging too much for the adoption. I mean, 5G for a home router here with 100 gig is like 70 to 100 pounds a month. But if you got it on 4G, 25 quid. It's the same network.
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing as far as in the satellite company that we're working with builds a lot of satellites in Afghanistan and the Middle East, and they're kind of top security satellites. A lot of the success, a lot of what hangs in the balance is the effectiveness of 5G. So it really depends on what the dish networks, the larger providers who purchase spectrums, that they have a certain amount of time that they can implement those spectrums, or they're gone for them, can actually do with them.
Yeah.
And my experience with that is that they're pretty good on their thought processes, but they're not, very, they're not super progressive on, trying to get it to work. So I see a lot of that in the industry currently.
Is there any other is there anything that you've sort of seen since we last spoke, which was halfway through the year? Is there anything that's really jumping out to you that you hadn't been aware of, that actually is a technology or a use case coming through that you thought, actually that could be really interesting, that could explode?
Well, as you may know, I've this past year, I think, has been the year for vision AI. So the way I divide it, and we're still in all these interviews and talking with people, so we haven't formally looked at the data, but the way I divide it is, IoT is all about gathering data and taking action on the data somehow that provides business value. Yeah. And there's really two ways you can do that. You can implement something new, like a MEMS-based accelerometer. You stick it all over factories and you record things that you hadn't been recording in the past. And you may provide new insights and provide new value to that mill, new cost reductions. Or you can take something that we've been doing for decades, since the 70s or even 60s, in like FFT or Fourier transform type diagnostics for spindles, for instance. We're working with a company right now that has some technologies around spindle technology that is very sophisticated because it's been around for decades, And the analysts who know how to look at this really know how to analyze diagnostically what's going wrong. You can use AI, you can use some newer sensors to do a value add to that. Or you can take, as an example, we have a cattle app in the beef cattle industry where we're using facial recognition for cows, which sounds kind of funny. But for ranchers who have had essentially no technology, it's a low-hanging fruit that is actually adding value. So just my intuitive feel is, I think the value for 2020 and maybe the first part of 2021 is in that low-hanging fruit where you may not normally be collecting data, but you can use simple AI vision, you can use AI algorithms, you can use machine learning algorithms to sort of derive value from things that people have been doing manually for decades or centuries in the fact of ranchers.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing that I found from a meeting, funny enough, with a family member who works for a big system integrator company, and he works with insurance companies, and they are really keen and hungry to be getting data from stuff like Dave does at Tharsus and some of the things that you're talking about, that they want to learn from the data so they can create new commercial models for the insurance industry. And they are being funded by the insurance industries to do that, because they're recognizing now that businesses that really connect up and know what's going on can actually start to consider being a bit more smarter with their insurances and their insurance premiums and investing in a different way. So, the insurance companies now thinking, okay, so actually, if we can use data and create new models that you pay for what you use kind of thing with the cover, that, you minimize the risk because you've got the data to react to say, well, it was your fault, you've got to suck on it and you've got to pay for it, or okay, it was that person's fault. It's if you think about like the black box and the cameras in cars, is a good sort of ground point that they're looking at. They're using that data heavily to create new commercial models and probably put premiums up, as they seem to constantly do. At the moment, I mean, 44 years old and still paying £1,000.
Can I jump in with a point there on that, Paul?
Yeah, sure,
There's
man.
a whole load of places where it might affect economics. Second-hand market, for instance. If you're selling something second-hand, that automatically commands a negative premium, whatever the equivalent might be for that, because you're taking a risk buying a second-hand device. But if you know how that device has been used for the entire duration of its life, then you'll be able to sell it second-hand for a lot lower than for a more appropriate price, probably a lot higher price than you would otherwise. There's a whole bunch of things like that. It's really interesting area of research that we've been looking at, is just how it affects the economics for a lot of businesses.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Actually, it's almost like a demonstrable sort of service book that I used to get with a car now, which are mostly digital now. In any case, of knowing exactly when and what was replaced, repaired on a car, how many miles it had done before it needed doing, such like that. True machine health for that sort of second-hand market, as well as it's really interesting.
We've seen, as you know, we work with a lot of investors on the private equity side. So one of the examples we've seen in that has been, the whole fintech market, banking and insurance is being disaggregated. So as an example, there is a startup that is a Mormon-based startup out of Utah. And, historically, Mormons don't drink alcohol. So their accident rates in auto insurance are much lower. So there has been sort of a, instead of treating insurance as a very broad, the entire population type thing, there seem to be popping up these, kind of much smaller niche markets where we say, hey, everybody that's involved with our app is a Mormon. They don't drink alcohol. And so they should be paying less on insurance. And there seems to be a lot of interest on the investment side in that disaggregation model, where you find populations of people that may be at less of a risk.
Yeah.
And it's not so much involved around technology as it is around culture.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, we have a postcode based system here, and sometimes it's going to work in your favor, like it is currently. Sometimes it can totally work against you, and it's simply just because of the postcode, which the data hasn't been changed and updated for a long time. Hey, Daniel, I really appreciate your insight. Thanks for that. Savvas, how are you doing, sir?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. So everybody, this is Savvas. He is the guy that helps me immensely with IoT North. So this is my thanks to Savvas for the great help that he's given the meetup over the past year. Without him, we wouldn't have this Zoom account for a start. But we've got some big plans as well coming through for next year with a use case marketplace, or I should call it solution marketplace, which is available for all the members to be able to put their solutions on, and we will enable lead generation from whatever you've got and being made, and we'll share across our social profiles and our partner profiles to drive awareness. So for me personally, thanks very much for the support from the University of Savvas. We really appreciate it. Thank you. And based on that, I know that we've got the Arrow scheme at the university. I just thought it'd be great for the community to hear a little bit about that and understand how that can help.
Well, actually, the university has a number of. Well, sorry if I'm going to sound like I'm doing a pitch here, but
pitch away, mate. Pitch away. You've earned it.
So the university has a number of ways that they can engage with companies. And of course, something that we always want to do, because there's no point, believe it or not, doing research without actually someone knowing about it. And it does make a big difference when you have the opportunity to collaborate with people from the outside, as opposed to being an afterthought. When there is a problem, you are a few steps down the line, and suddenly you realize that you need someone to support you in some way. So beyond the usual, more, if you like, teaching-oriented type of support that we can provide, and this is not, by the way, Newcastle University specific thing. It's a broader point. We can help, of course, companies with recruitment. We can help with projects that you may have at the back of your hand and you want someone to work with them through student projects. If it is a bit more comprehensive work that is required, maybe a dissertation project will be a better way of going forward, if you think that it's something that the student or students, for that matter, can potentially contribute to this. I find this is particularly useful when you have, as I mentioned, an idea and you want a different angle to be covered. So, for instance, sometimes we have, I'm in the business school, so we have companies come to us and say, well, look, we are thinking of exporting in different markets. Do you have any students we can do some background desktop type of research? And because our students come from all over the world, sometimes they will be in markets that the company is interested in going to, and as a result, we can allocate them accordingly. But beyond that, there are 3 or 4 main modes of engagement. Sometimes I find they're not as well known to businesses out there. Some of them are temporal, some of them are more formal, in the sense that they will be there irrespective of funding. So, for instance, Paul mentioned the Arrow project. There is an ERDF scheme in which we got some money from the European Union to support companies in the Northeast. Actually, not all parts of the Northeast, so it depends on which postcode exactly you're in, and also it depends on which sector you're in, and it depends on a number of other attributes. Whether you are going to be eligible for this kind of support or not. And Arrow has a couple of key ways that it can support businesses. Typically, projects are benefiting from the support that the Arrow Innovation associates are bringing to the company, but also the academic expertise. So, for instance, you can have an engineering problem, or you may have a business problem, you may have a computing science problem. And you can approach Arrow with a project, typically of, say, 1 to 2 month type of project, so small scale. You can pose a question, and we'll try to provide the answer one way or another. It's a relatively light touch in terms of doing the paperwork. So if you think of engaging with the universities, I think it's an ideal way of testing the waters. There is another Arrow dimension in which Arrow can provide match funding. So if you have something that is in the pipeline and it's quite innovative and novel, and you have some funding secured, I believe there is. I can't remember the exact name, to be honest. I think it's Arrow Catalyst. I always get confused which one is which. That can provide some additional funding to trial the idea. If it's something a bit more comprehensive and longer type of engagement is necessary, there is Innovate UK funding through the KTP scheme, Knowledge Transfer Partnership. We're actually about to finish one with an engineering company in which we were looking at sort of digital transformation, especially when it came to marketing, where we will go in as academics and collaborate on a project that's typically 2 years. It can be 1 to 2 year type of project. We will employ an associate, and our engagement will be paid by Innovate UK. These are more comprehensive projects that are dedicated on a specific issue and challenge that the company is facing. So there's nothing academic as such, because sometimes people worry that we'll go into a company and will focus on doing blue sky research with absolutely no relation to whatever is happening on the ground. Of course, we do have to find something academic, so there needs to be a bit of a novel and something challenging enough so that we can typically publish it. But the focus is on the business. So if you have a project and you're thinking of employing someone, I find KTPs are a fantastic way to engage with the university, because if you're going to employ them, you can funnel that money through Innovate UK, get the additional support, and get the bonus of having the university access. And KTPs, are just like the Arrow projects, are not, again, business school specific. You can do KTPs with computing science, you can do KTPs with engineering school, and so on. And of course, there is the consultancy side of things, which is the last thing, or the collaborative research, where you can do some more bespoke type of projects. The main difference, I suppose, is that the consultants you pay for that bespoke research. With the collaborative research, depends on the motivations of the academics. Often will basically ask for data. So if you have some data you want, we think that is valuable to do some analysis and go and publish, then we'll do that free analysis for you. You get the results. By the time we publish a paper, it takes anything between 6 months to a year. So it's not that we're going to share, all this newfound knowledge overnight. So you still get that advantage, something that potentially you won't have worried about. So there are a number of ways, and if anyone is interested in, engaging, I will most definitely suggest, you throw us an email, and we can identify who is the right person to talk to, and then direct you accordingly. As far as pitching is concerned, I'll put a link in the chat that you may find some of the work we've done with Paul and the local ecosystem in the Northeast related to the IoT barriers and ways that we could potentially support companies to get over them. This is a project that was funding through the sort of central pitching that was hosted by University of Sheffield. Other collaborators include University of Cambridge and University of Oxford. And they all had the theme. Our particular project wasn't a research project as such. It was primarily about the knowledge engagement and the knowledge transfer, and sort of supporting the local ecosystem. So there's nothing that we're trying to publish as such. We're trying to understand what the problems are and sort of help or be as much of help as we can. So you can find some of the work we've done in that on that front. And the IoT meetups we are organizing with Paul were part of that engagement. Interestingly, we've had that discussion about the IoT meetups with Paul just before everything got locked down in March. So I'm not sure if it was our fault, but I think it has worked fantastically well. All the events have been well attended and well received. The only difference is that you don't get free pizza and beer, which hopefully we'll be able to do at some point in 2021.
So does that mean that you're going to send me a Christmas hamper with that budget?
Well, no. Why not?
Hey, Savvas, again, thanks very much for your support. Really appreciate it. And if anybody would like to get in touch with Savvas, by all means, contact us through the website, and I can relay them on and introduce you. And Savvas has got his contact details here in the chat for those of you live on the meetup, as this will be on YouTube. Savvas, thanks very much. Last but certainly not least, Mr. David Tischler from Ballina. How are you?
Hey everyone, I am lucky today. Not only do I get to go last, so I had the entire chat right now to get prepared, but I also got the I think the most fun segment. I get to show off a bunch of tech goodies that you need to add to your Christmas list.
Well, and that's exactly what I was wanting out of this. David and I have done a number of online talks and stuff, and it's always fun. David always has more toys on his desk than I do. I seem to have more headsets and microphones lying around these days of the amount of time I spend on Zoom than I do actually Raspberry Pis and Vizzies, although there are 3 Vizzies sat over there if anybody wants one. David, just a quick intro about Ballina and what you guys do for those that don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I recognize a couple names from previous meetups. So you folks can take a quick nap. We'll wake you up as soon as I'm done with the intro here. But Ballina is an IoT fleet management platform. So what that means is a way to manage and maintain devices out in the field. Devices such as Raspberry Pis, Jetson Nanos or Jetson Xaviers, Beagle Bones, and then there's a slew of more enterprise grade industrial hardware. And the premise is that a device out in the field opens up a VPN connection to Ballina Cloud, which then allows you to interact with the device. And there's some tooling in place to push containers, push workloads onto those devices. So it's sort of a command and control system, easy to use, and fleets of IoT devices are easy to prototype on when they're on your desk here, like mine, which always filled with goodies. No headsets, no microphones here, but once they're out in the wild, it gets it gets a lot more difficult. So that's what Ballina Cloud is all about.
Awesome, and let's not forget about your great little tool, Ballina Etcher, as well.
Yeah, Etcher. Yeah. So if you've ever flashed an SD card for a device or a USB stick, if you're trying out Ubuntu or Fedora, flashing a Linux distro or anything. Etcher is open source utility. So that's where most people know Ballina from, is from Etcher.
Well, you do a great sort of lead from Etcher into the images that you've already got, like the audio streaming image and such like as well, which is a great little hook. It got me hooked and got me getting frustrated with Raspberry Pis for a couple of weekends.
It definitely has a large blast radius, but it doesn't really pay the bills. Ballina Cloud is what pays the bills to keep the lights on. But Etcher is good at attracting eyeballs into the ecosystem. Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, so what toys you got for us that we should be adding to our Christmas list?
Well, let me ask you this real quick. Let me see if I can share screen. You might have to promote me up to co-host, but let me try.
Oh, yeah, I probably will do.
Let me see here. Nope, not letting me. So if you don't mind giving me some power.
Savvas, it's not letting me do it. Would you mind doing it?
1 second.
I should have asked for that in advance. I apologize.
My bad.
Is that okay now?
Okay, it says I am a co-host. All right, now share screen, and I should be good. The question is, which monitor is this? All right.
If you've got one, I want it.
Like I said, I had the whole screen prepared. Best thing ever happened to me was going last. So First and foremost, by popular request of the panelists, is the PS5. Now, good luck finding one, but if you can, that seems to be the top of everyone's list for the year. And I guess I didn't look too close. I didn't even realize until just right now that you can get it in a digital edition or with the drive. I did not even know that.
Same as the Xbox.
Yeah, so today I learned. But if you can't get a hold of one of those, well, then obviously the next best thing is going to be this. Hang on, Control Shift T. And obviously, item number 2 on the list is a Visi AI starter kit, which I've got mine right here. So I'm teasing because, Paul, you and I did an episode, what, last month, 2 months ago now?
Yeah, I think it was 2 months ago, yeah. Well, I think we did one last month, and we did one a month before.
I think it was November, or was it October? I can't keep my...
It was October and November.
Yeah. The reason I say that, though, is because you record these, obviously, Paul. So they're sitting out where? On the YouTube channel is where they're
they're on the Go250 YouTube channel, the ones that we've done. They're also on the blog page of the website as well.
So you can check that out for some more information on that. But yeah, I'm a hardware nerd. I mean, you just saw my desk a moment ago. So, so the rest of these items on my list are for hardware nerds out there. But let's see. Now, if you're shopping for someone else and they may not know how to take advantage of the power of that Visi AI kit, well, then perhaps something like a Raspberry Pi 4 is more up their alley. Obviously, you can't go wrong with that. It's a great way to get started on IoT hacking. The ecosystem is large. There's a lot of projects and documentation out there. It's an easy way for folks to get going. Along the same lines, I added to the list Arduinos. So a little bit smaller devices, but for folks that are just getting going, again, easy to use, lots of add-ons. In this ecosystem, though, you kind of have to do a little research about what you are really looking to accomplish for your IoT project, because you can see here some of these have BLE, is Bluetooth enabled. I think the default ones do not have that, and you'd have to expand over the header pins if you're adding Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. There are even some of them that, and you can add shields to them as well. So you can see relays are here, motor shield. For IoT use, here's some that have Wi-Fi on board. Fox 1200, I think, includes Sigfox connectivity, GSM modem here, so that would take a SIM card slot, Ethernet shield. So, you kind of have to do a little bit of homework to think about, but they're great for beginning prototyping. I saw just recently, might have been this morning actually, a Grove shield for them as well. Moving along, though, by the way, any questions, just pop them in chat, although, Paul, you'll probably have to read them off to me.
I'll read them out if anybody puts them up there, buddy.
Yeah, in this view. But moving along, if a PlayStation, a Visi AI, or Pi or Arduino are not your thing, how about this? I found this, which I thought was pretty cool. This is e-ink, e-paper. So these displays are slow to refresh. They're not like an LCD, but they maintain their image even after the power is cut. They're actually really cool for signage that is like literally on a shelf, or we see specific to IoT use cases, we see inventory, manufacturing and warehousing, when customers have, rows and rows and rows, well, shelves and shelves of parts and inventory and bits. They will use these kinds of displays to tag what is in the bin. And they can be remotely updated, again, just need a small little device to power it, whether that's a Raspberry Pi, or they can be hooked up. You know what, I take that back. I don't know if an Arduino can power them or not. I would assume so, but this one in particular is for a Pi, or any device that has the 40-pin header. So, lots of other options.
It also has the same stock levels as a PlayStation 5.
What's that? Say again?
It also has the same stock levels as a PlayStation 5.
It's out of stock. I noticed that. Can't get it either. So maybe keep an eye on that page. Yeah. But I thought it was pretty cool. Neat little thing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Let's see here. Any other real hackers? They need this. A screwdriver that has an LCD screen on it and a microcontroller and battery powered. You charge it up. I mean, now this is a real screwdriver. If your screwdriver is not internet connected, I mean, I don't know what you're doing. So this is the IoT screwdriver right here. This obviously, I mean, this is superior. I think it's got an STM32 in it. If you need to reprogram your screwdriver, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the world is coming to. Yeah, here it is, STM32 MCU, 3-axis gyro. I mean, that is for some superior screwing and unscrewing.
Well, that's the replacement for the PlayStation 5 this Christmas for me. It's going to be the same smart screwdriver.
Yeah. I'll drop these links in a moment into the chat for folks to check out. But I thought this was fun. I mean, it's totally absurd, absolutely ridiculous, but it's fun. And let's see, next on the list, if that's not your cup of tea, maybe the IoT soldering iron is. So it's the Adafruit part. It is in stock. And again, USB, rechargeable, got an LCD screen on it. Although I don't see any pictures of the LCD lit up. I assume, or I imagine it shows the temperature, or what else? I don't know. What else could you possibly be rendering on a display for a soldering iron? I can only imagine temp. But so anyways, if you need an electronic microcontroller, USB powered soldering iron to do your soldering, you're a hardcore nerd. But last one on the list, I thought, hey, why not build your own LED Christmas tree? There's the parts right there. You can use your IoT powered soldering iron. You can use IoT screwdriver and build yourself a little miniature, hey, come on, render, come on, LED Christmas tree. It's kind of nice looking. It comes out.
I'm tempted. It'll be better than it'll be better than the Christmas tree that I've currently got in the living room.
Yeah. You can't fit too many presents under it, but it looks like a fun build. $26 US, not too terribly expensive. Seems like a good gift. And there it is, completed. So that's all I had. Anyone else got anything fun?
Chris from iPad Air 2 The E-Link display would be best suited to a microcontroller with a sleep mode to take advantage of low power, such as ESP32, etc. TS80 are quite popular. Cool. Might get one. Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Hey, thanks for that, David. Really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure working with you this year, and I'm sure we'll do plenty of stuff next year as well.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, so okay, so just a quick heads up to everybody that may be looking for a hack to get part of. A little bit of advance notice. There is a hack from AD Link that I'm running, which will be launching on December 15th. Nearly had a PR for Paul there. December 15th, it'll be launching. It's a hack looking for AI vision solutions for industrial. The first phase is a written submission of 400 words of what you believe you could build. If you get through to phase 2, you'll get a free Visi AI and support from AD Link and the Intel OpenVINO team in putting your prototype together over a 6-week period. The winning prize is $10,000 and a go-to-market partnership with AD Link with support from Intel as well. So that'll be being announced across the IoT North profiles, go-to50.ai profiles, and obviously AD Link and Intel as well. There'll be a lot of training and support and some insights and stuff right the way across December and January on all the tools you'll get access to build a prototype out. And it's a pretty decent prize. So anybody that's interested in that and is playing with vision models and thinks that you've hit onto something in the industrial space, such as distribution, manufacturing, worker safety and such like, then there's a great opportunity here. One of the reasons we've designed it the way we have is because quite often with a hack, they sort of just fall into a void once the prototype's been done, and then you're left on your own to go and validate to the market. Well, that's the key thing that we're going to support you with, is taking that prototype and validating it to the market with the prospect of it being turned into a full product solution. With a company like AD Link, we do the software and the hardware as well, so you're in good hands, as well as the big relationships with our friends like Belina as well. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. That's going to keep me busy for a little while. The next meetup will be in February, and we'll be taking the January break. I'm pretty sure we'll probably all still be hungover for the first one, for the 1st of January. Well, it'll be the 4th, 5th of January. So yeah, the next one will be in February, and notifications of updates of that. If you're interested in being one of the first on the solution marketplace, which should be launching around February time as well, please do get in touch via the website. There is a form there to fill out, and we'll happily get your content provided on there. It's a very simple format that we'll be doing. Any interest, contact me directly, and I'll talk you through that. On that, thanks very much to Matt, Ben, Dave, Daniel, Joe, Savvas, and David for their time this evening. Really appreciate it. And especially the shopping list there. So if anybody would like to grab David's shopping list and links, please do so now, just before we wrap up. Have a great holiday. Have a great break. I'm sure 21 is going to be a better year than 2020. But thanks very much for being a part of the community, and hope to see you again next year. And on that, I will say Merry Christmas. Good night. Thanks.
Right.
Thanks.